Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen who have joined us on this Dr. Fundi channel. My name is Dr. Fundi Lenyati. I'm the host on the channel. Today, we have an interesting discussion in prospect. We are talking brands, we are talking branding, and we'll also be talking professional and personal branding. And who better to actually help us with that kind of discussion than to invite and have Mr. Brands himself, Mr. Thebe Ikalafeng. I just want to tell you a little bit about our guest today. He's arguably the foremost global African branding authority. He's a chartered marketer who obtained his BSc and MBA degrees from Marquette University in the United States. He completed his executive education at Wits Business School and also at Harvard Business School. He's got a distinguished, corporate career, which started at Colgate and Palmolive in New York and concluded with him being a chief marketing officer for Nike for Africa. He's a serial or multiple award winner who during his time in corporate has won over 75 awards in branding and marcoms, that is marketing and communications globally. He was recognized by the New African magazine as one of the 100 most influential Africans. He's a founder of award-winning brand leadership group that has worked with over 100 corporate, national, that is countries and political brands across Africa. His organization was also recognized by Finweek magazine as a marketing services agency of the year. That was in 2008. And he was inducted in the Rebrand Hall of Fame for excellence in branding in 2015. He is the founder of Brand Africa Initiative whose purpose is to mobilize Africans and the diaspora to proactively drive brand-led African agenda. He's going to have to tell us about this brand-led African agenda. Now, one of his recent things, he is a founding principal. He's the principal of a school. He's a founding principal of Africa Brand Leadership Academy, ABLA. Right now, that is something that, with all the experience, with all the insights that he has got over the years since he started in this space, he's now looking at empowering and building and, transferring all that knowledge to others so that indeed Africa can actually take its rightful place and African brands, to be specific, can take their rightful place. Because as I was preparing for our chat, I came across a statement that he made that I think something like less than 20%, of the brands that people admire are actually African brands, in the surveys that he has done over, a number of years, I think since 2010. So Africans tend to be attached to brands that actually originate from outside of the continent. And we don't really appreciate and support brands that are actually homegrown in this continent of Africa. So Mr. Thebe Ikalafeng, welcome to the Dr. Fundi channel.
Thank you so much. That's a long CV. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut it into, he was born and raised in Kimberley and he grew up with diamonds on the soles of his shoes. So he's come to Johannesburg to shine a light in the continent.
Yeah, so you're from the big hole. Well, that's the city, the first city in South Africa to have lights.
Indeed.
So you are bringing light when it comes to all matters branding, not only to South Africa, but actually to the continent and the world.
Thank you.
Lovely. So I normally start there, and ask people where they come from and all of that, but I don't want us to get to that today. But maybe where I want us to start is you are synonymous with brands. You and brands, if I talk brands, I think Thebe Ikalafeng, you know. Now, your love for the space of marketing and communications, but specifically brands, just tell us a little bit about what attracted you to this space, was now you are the guru in this space. A guru is an expert. You are the guru in this space, but where did it all start?
Well, all of us growing up, we grew up with Colgate, right? And it didn't matter what it is because it's the strength of the brand. That when you want to brush your teeth, the first thing that comes to mind is Colgate. And now, if you want to be a premier athlete, think about brands. You say Nike. I want to run Nike because Michael Jordan, Michael Johnson, and all the great athletes in the world run in Nike. So just two of the brands at least that I worked with. So you can see from my formal upbringing at least that I was associated with brands which have become part of people's lifestyle, but also part of how people reference themselves. People who say, I'm just a Heineken guy. Oh, I'm a Castle person. I don't take anything else. Or I just use Louis Vuitton, or I just wear Rich Nisi, or I'm a Kosa guy. Because brands become something that reflects who we are, reflects where we are, and also something that we can that can identify where we come from. So that's the thing about brands. And having worked with some of the greatest brands and in consulting, then having consulted to numerous brands across the continent, my love for brands, or rather my focus on brands, was deepened because I then got to see the second part of it. And the second part of it is that brands really add value to an organization, to a country. So if I say America, for example, you think entrepreneurship, you think, and when I say entrepreneurship, say, what are some of the greatest entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial ideas? You then say, oh, Microsoft, McDonald's, Zoom, or any of these brands that come from that part of the world. If I say Germany, you say, oh, that's engineering excellence. You say, that's Porsche, that's BMW, that's Audi. If I say France, you say, oh, that's the height of sophistication and sexual attraction, if you will. That's why some of the brands we speak to, Louis Vuitton, about Chanel, about how women or men present themselves, or the colognes which we want to spray ourselves come from France, because it's all about that. So that's what brands do. They give a country an identity. They give a country or a person or a nation an identity. And we grew up with those brands, whether they're non-African brands or even the African brands that we grew up with. So that's why I think brands, because I think brands can do a lot for the country, but it's not good enough just to be identified with or to give an identity to the country, but they also add value. And the value part, if you think about it, is if a brand is created in Africa, or South Africa specifically, and it is wholly created and sold here, it means the profits are retained in this country. And if the profits are retained in this country, it means we're able to drive our own development agenda. We don't have to go to China to ask for vaccines, or to go to India to ask for vaccine, because we create our own vaccine brands in the country. And that's why, if you're speaking currently, that's why you look at how those countries, they've used the vaccine to affirm their national brands.
Now, again, as I was trying to prepare for this, I looked at a few things from your website, that is APLA website, and there's a few things that interested me there. There is a quotation that I like there that says, brands can shape a nation's image, whilst a nation's image can significantly influence purchase decisions. Can you just expand on that?
Well, from an image perspective, I think I'll probably build on what I've just said. That so because of the brands that we create, that are created by a country, you then get to create an image of the country. Let's look at Kenya, for example, within the continent. They came up with M-Pesa, and M-Pesa now drives about 60 to 70% of the GDP of Kenya goes through M-Pesa. Means all transactions go through that brand. So in many ways, then it shapes our view of, or our perception of Kenya as a very tech-led country, as a country which is technologically advanced, because the brand was created there, and the brand creates value in that country. So now, on the other hand, if you get a country, let's say a country like America, for example. So Trump says, and I'm going to use the example, the current example. Trump then says, I'm creating Operation Warp Speed. With Operation Warp Speed, I am giving you so many hundreds of millions of dollars. And with
10 billion US dollars, yeah.
10 billion US dollars. And with those US dollars, I want you to create the first vaccine to combat this virus, and it must be made in America. So that decision by a country to support an idea such as that helps to create or to affirm the positioning of the country as at the cutting edge of innovation. So that's how the relationship works. So if you go to a country like Rwanda in Africa, for example, a country like Rwanda, they said here in Rwanda, if you want to start a business, you can do everything within 24 hours. We will register your business in 24 hours. So what does that do for a young entrepreneur? It becomes easy for them to do business in Rwanda, which is why Rwanda and Mauritius are among the top 5 in the best countries to do business, or the easiest country to do business with. But then if you look at our country, for example, you try and apply to open up a business, could take you forever because the country is not driving or encouraging that entrepreneurial development or entrepreneurial positioning of a country. So that's how the relationship works. And if they're not driving entrepreneurs to be able to, if they're not making it easy for entrepreneurs to be able to start and create businesses and to innovate products which will solve our problems, then it means that the country is affecting its own ability to create brand, or it's affecting its own image as a country that's good to do business in.
Lovely, lovely. Now, another quotation from, I'm taking stuff from your website. To build great brands in Africa, you need to understand the African consumer, not where they are, but where they come from, carrying their own dreams and the dreams of their villages. Now, an African consumer, I'm sure there's diversity there. Or can we actually have and say an African consumer is like this? Can you just talk about that?
I don't think the African consumer is monolithic. I think the African consumer, if you will, even within any one country, there's such a diversity of consumers. So if you come, even let's use our country, South Africa, as a small subset. Even in this country, you've got broadly, you've got the South African. But you can't sell to the South African. You have to sell to the middle class, or you have to sell to the lower income group. But even the lower income group will become those who are in the rural areas and those who are in the urban areas. Because in order to sell to anybody, you need to understand what their needs are and how to get to their needs. Do you know, I must tell you, Fundi, what's interesting is before I traveled to every country in the continent, I had coffee with one of the CEOs of Samsung, KK Park. He was here in South Africa, working here in South Africa, running the continent. And I said to him, KK, how come your brand Samsung is in every single country? And then you've got the range from the cheapest to the lowest. I said, you've got such amazing innovations in the continent. You've got solar-based products, and he says, let me tell you, Thebe, and at that stage, I'd only been to about 10, 20 countries. He said to me, I have been himself to every single country in the continent. He said, when I go to a country, I do not go to fancy hotels. I go sit in with the real people. I go eat with them. I go spend the night in their places. I go to where they shop. I go and understand. He says, because of that, we were able to innovate the build. We were able to come up with the Build for Africa initiative, and we were able to come up with the solar-based products. He says, because when we see the load shedding in other countries, he says that did not look like a problem to us. It looked like an opportunity because we looked and said, but wait, if there's load shedding, but the sun never load sheds, maybe we can create products which are solar-based. And because of that, we're able to create products. So yes, you can say there's a broader consumer, but then you have no consumer is the same. In South Africa has got 55 countries. You've got countries as small as the disputed area like Western Sahara, which probably have nothing. And then you've got countries like South Africa and Egypt and Morocco and Kenya and Nigeria, which probably has the bulk of what the continent has.
Yeah. Now, about Africa, your love for the continent. You've already mentioned it. You have been to each and every country in this continent. And, because I've been following you on your socials, whenever you get to this country, you take pictures and, you know, you sipping coffee with different people and all of that. What have you gained, you know, in terms of insights as you were moving from country to country, and how has that shaped, you know, you as a person, but also the whole concept of branding? Because we're gonna get now to the ABLA, which is, you know, the institute that you have formed, of which you are the principal.
You know, Fela Kuti put it properly. He says, I must identify with Africa, then I will have an identity. So part of the biggest problems or challenges of being South African is this disconnect between South Africa and the rest of Africa. South Africans, when we go to the rest of Africa, we say, I'm going to Africa. And we don't see ourselves as part of the broader African community or people. So for me, having been to a few countries in the original stages, having been to a few countries, I ultimately started to evolve myself as a person, because every time I meet somebody from a different country, I became a different person, or I added on to who I am. And what did I discover about all of us? So while one cannot paint the whole continent with one picture, but you can certainly say we are definitely a warm people. So we're very welcoming people, because every country I've been to, I ended up meeting people and when I entered, they were strangers, and when I left, they were either friends or family. So people who took me in, who did not question me who I am, what my motives are, but who looked at me as a fellow African. So there's that welcoming thing that we call in South Africa Ubuntu. So that's that one thing. But the second thing you recognize about the continent is our resilience as people. So, you know, in South Africa, we like to tell people we grew up with 10 people sleeping under a table with one candle and in one room and half a loaf of bread to share for the last month. But what all those experiences have done, they have shaped many of us. They have made us more resilient. And when you go through the continent and you see other people who've got less than what you call were problems, you then realize that it is actually part of identity to be very resilient people. But linked to resilience, is our adaptability, our ability to shape the circumstances we are into what we want them to be. You know, we make in Afrikaans the Boer Marker Plan. But you know that a Boer Marker Plan, it's an African identity, because we make a plan. You make a plan for a mother who's a maid in South Africa and earns 1,500 or 2,000 rand, but sends 7 kids to university, and all of them become doctors, lawyers, and managers. And you ask yourself, how does she do it? She does it the way an African woman does. They make a plan and they make it work. I think, you know, I always think that African mothers are like Jesus. They can take those 2 fishes and 12 loaves of bread and feed a whole nation, because that's how we are. So I've learned that much about us. I've learned that something that has reinforced in me is that Ubuntu, or that humanity, that our common identity, that as people, that innovative ability to adapt to different situations and to make a plan out of it. To me, that's the common identity of what makes us continent. I mean, look at us now. Look at us now during COVID, right? None of us have created a vaccine, but we probably have the fewest. And all of us are so communal, because we live 10, 15 of us in a house. We are always in congested markets, but we have the fewest incidents of COVID and of the virus. And I'll tell you what, as the virus catches on, or if it does at all, goes beyond this, we will make a plan and we will survive this, because we've survived Kwashiorkor, we've survived the yellow fevers, we've survived every single thing that has been thrown at this continent. We're a resilient people.
Yes. All right. So now all of that, and then you bring it to brands.
So having traveled the whole continent, you know, I went to Eritrea, and then I was kind of amazed in Eritrea, which is just above Ethiopia. If you remember, they only got their independence in 91. But between 91 and 2 years ago, they were still fighting with Ethiopia for independence, or for self-rule, having gotten the independence, if you will. And I went to that country, and I found it to be it was a very close country. It's a very close country. And I was driving, and there's very little brands in the country. But I was driving through the country, and I saw a lone billboard of Coca-Cola. And I said, the strength of brands, that a brand like Coca-Cola will stand out in such a country which has got low incidence, if you will, of global brands. But having said so, having gone through the whole continent, I've looked at the things that we eat. And I said, we eat, we make our own clothes out of the fabrics that we have, but we have not branded them. So whether it's the kente, if you want, in Ghana, or the kikoi, or the sugar in Kenya, and if you look at all those, what we have failed to do as a continent is to take ownership of those and to build off of those as brands. Now, if you look at, for example, when Jamie Oliver took the jollof, which is obviously Nigeria, Senegal, Gambia, and Ghana, as quote unquote staple, they all fight about who makes the better one, but that's a different subject, right? But it's a staple of that belt of West Africa. Jamie Oliver took that and created. A westernized jollof, if you will. The West Africans went mad. They said, why does he take our own jollof? And because I've eaten the jollof in all those countries, and all of them told me theirs is better. And I said to them, the reason he's taken your jollof to brand it is because you have failed to brand it and to create value out of it. So if you come to South Africa, when a young man, Tsepo, tried to sell his jeans at 900 Rand, South Africans were saying, I am not going to buy jeans from a guy who was a Logish called Tsepo that I grew up with for 900 when I can get the same jeans at Markham's for 500 Rand. But as soon as Meghan Markle came to South Africa and got a pair of jeans for Archie, her daughter's son, and herself, South Africans now all of a sudden will work to the idea of a Tsepo jean. And they said, but Tsepo, what do you mean you're out of stock? But Tsepo says, because I only made jeans for those who appreciated me at that time. And Tsepo tripled the price and is selling more jeans and has opened at
Mall of Africa.
Well, no, at Hyde Park. He chose Hyde Park. He chose Hyde Park as his first place. But if you go to Lesotho were those blankets, if you know Sierra Marena, the blankets. When Louis Vuitton took the blanket and created a shirt and a shawl and a scarf and sold them for upwards of $3,000, which is 40,000 rands. And when you can buy the same blanket for 300 Rand or 500 Rand in South Africa, or in Africa rather, somewhere in Lesotho or South Africa belt, Basutus went mad. They said, but that's our culture. Why is he taking our culture? Because there's two things about us. First, we don't brand our own. We don't take ownership of our brands. We don't register and trademark our own ideas. And secondarily, we wait until somebody outside tells us we are worth something. And only if an outsider tells our goods are worth something do we then wake up to the idea that we have sat with gold in our hands. Because to us, we've commoditized everything and the rest of the world has branded our ideas.
Yes. And I mean, talking about Tsepo, the jeans, I saw a picture of yours where I'm not sure if it was a launch. He has partnered with a young South African Jewish guy, and they are going places, and you obviously have been there guiding him, all the way. And I'm sure you were quite fulfilled to see, the progress that he has made and the fact that now his products are actually going out there to the world.
Well, I mean, the Tsepo jeans story is instructive for the reason I've said before, which is he did not necessarily wait to be validated. He believed in the idea himself and built it. But the second one, it's a story of South Africa. It's a story that we were promised in 1990 and 94, that a rainbow nation finally at peace with itself. So he partners with a Brosen child who's a qualified actuary, so understands numbers, and himself understands design. So what better story to tell? And the Brosen kid, remember, he comes from the Nando's family. So he understands what it's like to build a global brand, because Nando's is the global South African fast food brand. So the two of them, I think, create a beautiful narrative of what it takes to be together. Because I think, unfortunately, we can't all depend on government, because government is only going to work for the few and not for the many. And generally, it works for the few undeserving rather than the many deserving. So for this country and the continent to go ahead, we all need to find resources within ourselves. And that's what you can take pride in a guy like a Tsepo, because he found the resources himself and was identified, or he identified somebody who can help him to take his dreams further, rather than say, I'm trying to get a tender, I'm trying to get a grant, or I'm trying to get government to say.
Yeah. And then I also saw you again featuring a lot around the Maxhosa brand. You went when they opened, I think, in the Mall of Africa, and you spent a lot of time with the young men who came up with the Maxhosa brand. Just your comment around that.
Well, the beauty about three brands that I absolutely love in the continent. I love Ethnic in Nigeria, and I love Motions in Rwanda, and I love Maxhosa in South Africa. The common thread among those three is that all have used their culture to create a new narrative. So they have taken the culture to the world. So Maxhosa, Laduma, I've worked with Maxhosa for years now, and Laduma from Maxhosa, the beauty about him is he also said, how do I honor my culture and share my culture with the rest of the world without dishonoring where it comes from? So, and when he said many times, he said, Thebe, our initiation is a very sacred Xhosa culture. And he says, there's a way we can share that without desecrating what it's all about. So one of the things that we must remember we should note that is going to distinguish us globally is our culture, because our culture should inform our creativity. And when you do that, you cannot be copied anywhere else in the world. They can copy you, but they can never ever be as authentic as you. So our culture gives us a very authentic grounding to create very distinctive brands. And that's what I love about what Laduma started, and what Babatunde started in Nigeria with the Yoruba culture, and what Moses did in Rwanda with the Rwandese culture.
Yeah, just as a side issue, branding, to come up with a brand like Maxhosa in a country where we are still reeling from, the ethnic divide, the tribalism and stuff. How brave was that to come up with a brand like that, in a country where, some of us, when we got here in the mid-90s, sometimes we had to be a bit quiet about, Xhosa, try and speak a bit of Zulu, because it evoked things that people had heard from their grandparents about these ex-Xhosas from the south of the continent.
That's such an interesting perspective, because one hardly ever thinks about that truth about us. Now, if you go to Rwanda, tribalism is the cause of the 1994 genocide, when they tried to separate the two and to say the one tribe was superior than the other. And when you come to South Africa, you're right, because how the apartheid government was able to rule is by dividing us, and they divided us along tribal lines. And of course, some other tribes said they were stronger, they were bigger, they were more regal. And others will say, shame, there's only three of them. And all those. But I think what Laduma was able to do well, he was able to find the heroism in his culture. He was able to find the universal truth in his culture. And he did not impose and launch his culture as the best. He didn't say our culture is the best. He said, what I appreciate about my culture, which I would love to share with the rest of the world, is the creativity of this. He did not deny the creativity of Amandebele, because Esther represented that very well. He did not deny the creativity of Amashangan, because people like Misi are doing that very well. So he recognized what we have in the motto of South Africa, which is unity in our diversity. Our tribes give us that color that makes us South Africans, that African rainbow at peace with itself. So I think it wasn't so much a risk. The risk would have been had he focused on trying to make the Maxhosa tribe and say that Maxhosa are superior. He did not say that. We've got other cultures we can talk about, right? But we will mention who will always tell us they're the better culture, they're the bigger one, they're the stronger ones. But Maxhosa did not go that way. He focused on what makes it distinctive and what makes it delightful and attractive.
All right. Now, let's get back then to our discussion around, you have been doing the Africa Brand 100, I think since around 2010. I just want, over the years that you've been doing that, what are the things that, you could say, these are the insights I got as I was doing that ranking of brands over the last 10, 11 years or so?
Do you know what happened around 2010 is I dropped out of my doctorate twice or thrice. I dropped out of my doctorate twice. And because every time I put down a concept of how to think about brands in the continent, I then end up saying, oh, just do it and forget that piece of paper. And the idea about ranking brands in the continent was an idea for my doctoral proposal. I then said, I'm going to spend 4 years studying this stuff instead of spending 4 years doing this stuff. So, as a matter of fact, one professor said to me, "Oh, Thebe, you already have an idea what you want to do. Why waste time with the doctorate? Just go ahead and do what you want, because you got clarity around that." So I did this because I was trying to assess how we as the first thing is I was trying to assess how we are performing relative to global brands. I want to know how, because intuitively I knew that we love our Western brands because we think Western brands make us look better. Because, for example, just as an example, until I started, because you know me for much longer, before I started wearing these suits, this type, I was mostly suits and ties. Yes. And then when I switched to wearing suits and ties, and wearing more Afro, Pan-African clothes. People say to me, you must just wear those things we like about you, your suits. You look so much better in suits compared to these things you wear from Africa, they like to say. But not realizing that, part of what we need to do is, Kwame Nkrumah used to wear his kente. Kenneth Kaunda used to wear his suits like this. The teacher used to wear those round ones, and you can go to all of them from Sankara. There was an identity about what they had their brands in terms of how they branded, how they branded themselves. But I wanted to know beyond just how people present themselves. I wanted to know how we're looking as brands, how we compare as brands, and I was astounded to find that that over the years, when you look at the average over the 10 years I've done this, that only 20% of the brands that Africans admire in Africa are made in Africa. So that is, to me, I then said, there's a problem. I said, I need to try and understand this problem. Why is it that Africans do not attach to their brands? And that's why I then decided to start Abla, and we'll talk about Abla in a minute. But I recognize that one of the fundamental problems is our self-identity. The fact that they say, yes, Thebe, you look much better in your Gucci's and your Vuittons than you do as a Pan-African wearing your Kentes and all those. It means there's a general rejection of how an African presents himself in an African context. So if you decide to wear your Xhosa clothes every day, like a Joburg, they're going to say, are you with me? Now, to a event, a function, because they've reduced how we present ourselves to an event or to something else. Whereas you look somebody like Esther Mahlangu, she dresses like every day. She can't take off those things. part of who she is as an identity.
The woman.
So we looked at this and says part of the reasons that we don't support our own things. One is this general lack of of confidence in anything made in Africa. But second is because we want to be validated by others rather than ourselves. And our study shows that the fact that Gucci has been in the top 10 for the last 10 years gives you an idea that there's a problem. That we celebrate Gucci more than we celebrate Dangote, MTN, M-Pesa, and all those other great brands which come from here. So if a David Kade or a Makosa or any of the designers I've spoken about, they are not as celebrated as we celebrate the Guccis of the world. So those are, to me, that's the biggest finding, that we do not support our own, that we wait to be validated. Most importantly, that there's a need to invest in a couple of things. We need to invest in Africans, the rest of all of us Africans, to appreciate who we are, what makes us distinctive, and second, to give us the tools to be able to take what makes us different into what we share with the rest of the world commercially.
Yes. Now, don't you think maybe part of the reasons behind our choices or us looking at external to Africa kind of brands, it's the fact that maybe we need some form of decolonization of the mind. I always say to people, the freedom that we have is good, but I think if it was infused with a little bit of that Black consciousness kind of thinking, where also it was about self-reliance, about self-pride, being proud of being Black and all of those kind of things, So I always say we've been shortchanged. Yes, we are free, but we're not really free, because in the mind, we still want to embrace everything that is outside of the continent. We're always consumers of stuff that comes from outside of the continent than we are consumers of stuff. Black Mambazo must be celebrated in America first, and Japan and Germany, before we can actually celebrate them.
Correct. And I think the phrase you put is correct, that there is a need for a decolonization of the African mind. There is also a need of, we must appreciate China for one thing. China, when Facebook, Instagram, and all those try to get into China, the Chinese says, hold up, we are going to close our borders and allow our people to create solutions that speak to them, to address those same needs that you've identified. And when our people reach a certain level, we will open up the border for you to come and compete with us at an equal footing. So one of the biggest problems that we have as part of the decolonization, maybe let's come to South Africa, where we are here, is this Ubuntu of ours is very destructive. It is destructive to our progress. Because of Ubuntu, we have opened up the border so wide that if you're a McDonald's, a Facebook, or Microsoft, and all those, and you want to come to South Africa, we will give you an opportunity faster than we'll give anybody called Fundi Lenyati. What does Fundi Lenyati know about us establishing a brand? So this Ubuntu of ours has, to me, if you had to apply Ubuntu to the way the Chinese apply Ubuntu, the Chinese says, Ubuntu starts at home. Charity begins at home. First, empower your own. And once you've empowered your own, you are then able. And then, the second thing is the Chinese will do everything in Chinese. South Africa, I'll speak about my country because I know it well. I know the others. South Africa will then proudly call a press conference and send out the press release to tell everybody we are going to now offer Chinese in schools. Go to China and ask them if they're offering Zulu in schools. Why are you prioritizing Chinese in schools in your education system, which has not gone anywhere, rather than prioritizing Kiswahili, which is the biggest language across the continent, or prioritize, or forget Kiswahili, if you're in South Africa, prioritize your home language, the spoken language, and deprioritize English, rather than have people who are raising children who at the age of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 can only speak English. When you speak to them, they say, oh, we have to speak English to our child because otherwise you'll not be able to learn well. I'm like, hell no. We grew up speaking isiXhosa, isiZulu, Ekhaya, and then we will come to school and speak English during English hour and leave English and speak there. And I think we've turned out just fine compared to some of these nincompoops, who some of them have not turned out well at all, because that's why many of them they've had to drop the standard of mathematics from 50% to 30%. Just to allow them to tell people they've seen something called mathematics in lifetime. So to see some of the problems that we have in the country, to me, so part of decolonizing the mind is trying to understand that charity begins at home, and home has got a certain identity where Africans or primarily Singamaxhosa, Abetswana, Amazulu, and that's what makes us distinctive, and that's what makes it an incredible people to engage with. Because nobody comes from America, from England, to try and come say, oh my goodness, I want to see how the South Africans speak English. English is for England. We are okay here. We speak English to be able to communicate with the rest of the world, but we are not English. We are African first. And that's why when you go to the Francophone countries, you have a problem that the Francophones want to tell you they speak French better than the French. Instead of saying, well, maybe I should speak my home language better than the French. Because when the French break up, when the French speak English with broken accent or even bad English, nobody laughs at them. Nobody says, most people say they are French. And if they speak French with broken French, nobody says they are stupid. They just say they are English. But when we speak English with a broken accent, or mix up the words because it's not our language, people say we are dumb. Instead of asking us, instead of doing what the Chinese would do and the French would do, if you speak to me in English or French, I must respond to you in Setswana, in Sisulu. That's why you can appreciate His Majesty Zwelithini because he's stuck to that.
Yes. Now, let's get to Abla.
To me, that's the decolonization of the mind. If you first understand who you are, where you come from, what makes you distinctive, and then use that as a foundation, as a basis to create. See, with us, we are so mesmerized by the West that we've created this consumerist mentality, and we think consumption is relevant and is having arrived. But consumption is modern slavery, and our consumerism is probably the most modern, the most effective way in which the West has enslaved us.
Yes. All right. Now let's get to Abla. So you are the principal, the founder or founding principal of the African Brand Leadership Academy. What happened? How did you get there? I mean, it was launched in February?
In February. So having spent 25 years in branding, having looked at branding as an employee from America to South Africa, across the continent, having looked at branding from a consulting space, having established the status of branding in the continent, I then had to find a way in how I'm going to intervene. So intervene to alleviate some of the challenges that we faced. So ABLA, Africa Brand Leadership Academy, is an intervention to shape, to sharpen the minds of the people who build the brands that are going to build the continent. We have a responsibility to understand that when MTN does well, South Africa does well. South Africa is seen as an innovative, creative, and a successful country. The same way that when Coca-Cola does well, we see America as a great country. And that's why, it was such a difficult thing for the British when Jaguar and Range Rover were bought by the Indians, because those were the symbols of English engineering excellence, right? So that's why we started ABLA with a principle of doing what I've said, which is about sharpening the minds of the people who are going to build the brands that are going to build the continent. Our principal focus in the next few years is going to help those executives, those entrepreneurs, and the next generation of brand builders to build made in Africa brands, which are going to transform this continent, but are also going to inspire the world and also to give us, find us, and also to afford us the respect that we so richly have earned.
Yes. All right. So just on that point then, so this is a tertiary private, academy or institution around issues of brands targeted at executives, targeted at entrepreneurs, targeted at up and coming people, the diploma. But we also got a lot of short courses that are going to be offered on various aspects, including the personal and professional brand, which is the last thing that we are going to be talking about. Now, so, and I looked at even the fees that you guys are charging, oh yes, we're charging dollars, but I mean, they're actually reasonable, for the type of content that I looked at there. But something that fascinated me is the structure of the institution. You have got the chairperson coming from Namibia. I'll call it the chairperson, maybe you use a different name. Then you've got the president coming from Kenya.
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. And then there's many other people who are out there, and you are there obviously as a principal. Now, how easy or how difficult was it to get these experts, PhD this, PhD that? They've been to some of the best schools in the world. They are thought leaders in their own right. The one from Namibia, he has just retired, but obviously the brain has not retired.
He's only 62, so he's very young.
Yes, and the lady from Ethiopia, I mean,
Ellen is a respected businesswoman in Ethiopia and America. She started the Ethiopian exchange. So yes, so we deliberately set out to do a couple of things. One is to be African, not just in name, but to be African in practice. So, a lot of times, and I'll use South Africa, I'll denigrate South Africa for one reason. In South Africa, they like to say we are African, but what they mean is they'll go find the one person that they know and put them there and says we're an African. Or they mean that we'll take South Africa and plant it in everywhere else and say we're South African. I wanted to be authentically African, to have the most respected, and I also wanted to find the most respected people. I didn't just want to find Jimmy and Jill come lately. I wanted people that when you look at, you say, my goodness, I want to be that type of person. And how easy was it? But remember, because I'm pretty well known across the continent and I'm pretty well traveled, so I used a lot of my personal equity and relationship to my social capital and to be able to attract and to speak to a lot of these people. Yes, it's
like I did with you. I used my social capital to get you to be here.
Indeed, but that's what it takes, because if you know your value as a personal brand, you are able to leverage that brand to not to use people, but to be able to advance mutual goals. Because remember, there's a mutual goal. You want to empower your people, and you say, who can I talk to that will respect what I'm about and what I'm trying to do. So there's a mutual benefit. There's a mutual benefit for me to speak to you, because more people are going to know what I do. Perhaps others are going to meet me for the first time. So there's a benefit to doing this.
Yeah. So you've got the programs I've already mentioned, for the executives, for the entrepreneurs, and also for the emerging leaders, and all the short courses that are for that are for other people. Now, and I was looking, I mean, every month you guys are scheduling, those courses, and everything is smooth. You can just do all the transaction, online and book, to be, in the program. Is it just virtual, as in like this, or is it also contact? And I'm thinking COVID, obviously, or is it a hybrid, depending on the situation?
First, we must appreciate what COVID has done, as well, when acknowledging that it's been disastrous in terms of what it's done to humanity as a virus. But in terms of what it has done to the mind, in terms of our thinking, it has completely reframed how we think about work, about business, and about relationships. That we no longer need bricks and mortars in order for us to progress in life. So as a start, I said we will initiate ABLA as a virtual institute to start with. But it is many ways a hybrid institution, because last week we delivered a blended hybrid program where we had a few people who were live at the venue, and others checked in via Zoom or via a conference platform. So yes, it's a hybrid, but given the conditions where we are now, it will be primarily virtual until we see where this virus is going to end. So we have representation in many of the leading capitals of the continent. So as soon as the borders are open and all those, there'll be a lot of hybrid programs, contact as well as virtual. But the world has changed dramatically and for good. We are now we're now in virtual existence, all of us.
Yes, and once one has enrolled and has gone through the program, there is certification at the end. You know, so is it certification of attendance? Is there some NQF stuff? Or, okay, that is only for South Africa, these NQF things, because now you are running for the rest of the continent. You can't necessarily be using the SAQA standards. Yeah.
Correct. But having said so, we are working, we in all our thinking and our design, we've said let's meet the minimum requirements of any one country in terms of how you structure learning, how you deliver learning. Our postgraduate diploma will be an accredited diploma, and NQF 8, 7, 8 qualification when we start offering. We're offering that only from July this year. But yes, offering courses across the continent. There's too many multiple educational entities. So the most important thing is quality. And that's what we wanted to showcase more than anything else. That with us, it's about quality, it's about relevance, that the content is relevant to the continent, and it's about accessibility, that it is accessible.
Yes. Now, before we get then to the professional and the personal branding, there's some comments that I would like my colleague to just read for you. So that you know that you've not just been talking to me. There are people who have been listening attentively to what you've had to say. Yeah. So Nwabisa, you can go ahead and share some of the comments with us.
Okay. Good afternoon. We have a couple of comments. The first one is from Homoto Motomachina, which reads, "Good day, Doc. Thank you for inviting the branding guru. So much respect for Thebe, Ikalafeng." The second one is from Wonga Shangakrina, which reads, "Kimberley was actually the first town in the world to get electric street lighting." And then the third comment is from Bunolo Mushiana, which reads, "Brilliant talk. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and experience, Thebe. What a dynamic duo. Dr. Fundi, I'm enjoying your line of questioning. Great interview." And the last comment is from Angelina Likalaga, which says, "Thank you for enlightening us about trademark, our brands, much appreciated. We'll definitely do some research on that." So that would be all.
Thank you very much. Keep them coming. But for now, let me continue to talk to our guest, Mr. Ikalafeng. Thebe.
Yeah,
right. I once went to Pulukwane and I was listening to Thobela FM. Yes. And there's a program, I think on Sundays there, that says Ngaka Nkalafe. Ngaka Nkalafe. So now as I was like trying to make sense of your surname, Ikalafeng means, hey, heal yourselves.
Yourself.
Hey, it's like, hey, you must heal yourselves, Ikalafeng.
I'm doing the opposite, but I'm actually doing the same thing, because what I'm doing is I'm empowering you so that you can heal yourself. So by sharing knowledge, I'm enabling you to be able to transform yourself and to be a source of inspiration and to do whatever you want to do, grow your own capital.
Yes. Now, just briefly, for the executive program, what are you aiming to, as value to that person who is leading a brand or leading an organization that has got some brands? What are you aiming that person to get out of the program that you guys are offering? And I'll ask the same for the entrepreneur. And there, the dilemma of which brand must actually be superior. My brand as Dr. Fundi or Fundi Lenyati, or my company Proactive Health Solutions. How do I deal with these two? For a long time, my company is 21 years old, but I've submerged, or just my personal brand has had to be subordinate to the company brand. But I've found that has not benefited the organization, and maybe now I'm trying to lift my personal brand and leveraging that for the benefit of my organization. So I just wanted to talk about that.
Interesting. So on the first one, on the first question about the executive program, one of the things that we're going to learn, and that we've learned over time, that you cannot build a brand from behind a desk. And a lot of these executives are sitting behind desks, and they are marshalling their troops who are all over the world and or the continent, trying to build a brand, whether it's from Lagos across Africa, Nairobi across Africa, or Johannesburg across Africa. What we're saying is that as an executive, you need to go out there and yourself, the same example I used about KK Park, when he said he personally had to go into every country to understand the country. And that inspired in me my travels, but also inspired in how we're shaping and developing the executive program. That it's that part of the core of that program is going to be an immersion, but it's going to be a completely different immersion than they are used to. They're used to going to Kenya and staying at Sankara or staying at Movenpick or staying at Kempinski. With our program, they are not going to stay at those places. Those places are way too fancy. They are too removed from the people who buy their products. We are going to locate them in exact places where the consumers are. They are going to understand how to do that. But we're going to try and do it in multiple ways. We're going to have 3 types of immersions. There's going to be the virtual reality immersion, where yes, they can visit Lagos from behind their desk, but using virtual reality, because that's the type of times we're in. But there's also, the second part of it is they're actually going to have to go into another market. And then the third part of it is they're going to go another market academically through desk research. So there's 3 ways that we are going to immerse them in different parts of the continent. Instead of, what I've never understood about these executive programs is they take you from South Africa and they take you to India, they take you to America, they take you to England, and they're saying that they are teaching you or shaping your ability to build a brand in the continent. Well, India, America, and Singapore are not Africa. If you want to build a brand in Africa, then you must understand the Africans, where they are and where they live. So we are going to take the Africans into the African context so that they can understand how to shape and build the brands for the people that they are talking to. But part of doing that is we are going to immerse them in there. So over and above all the other things you expect from that, and ensure that as well that the faculty is all African and it's diverse. And as diverse as you've seen it, to ensure that they are truly immersed in the African experience. That to me is what we're going to do with that. And what we're going to do with the entrepreneur program, and we did a program already, a pilot program last week, 2 weeks ago, sorry, is to help. You see, entrepreneurs are good at coming up with products. They are good at coming up with ideas. They create goods. They do stuff. The biggest problem is not necessarily how to come up with an idea. It's not necessarily sometimes, yes, it is a big one, but it is not necessarily how to raise funds. Their biggest problems is how to transform this product, this idea, into a world-class, competitive, and distinctive brand, so that this brand can do a couple of things. It can be the foundation of raising better capital in the future. That's why we do. That's why we do that program. And the postgraduate, as the diploma, as I've said, it is really about empowering the next generation of leaders to build brands in the continent.
And when people get to the ABLA, website, they will have all of this information, including, the content that's covered, the fees that are charged, and how everything is delivered. So it's all there.
Indeed, and the other second difference about us is that it is not you standing in front of a computer and moving a mouse. Yeah. All our lectures are going to be live.
Yeah.
So they are going to be live lectures that are delivered by real people that you see, not some PDF document and some PowerPoint that you have to scroll through and then email somebody questions and then, then say that you understand. There's going to be real life professor will be standing in front of you and teaching you. Yes. So correct.
Lovely.
I know you have another question, but I'll let you reframe it if you want. Do you want me to comment about brand Fundi and then brands your, what's the company again?
Well, it's PHS, Proactive Health Solutions.
Proactive Health Solutions, yes.
Yeah, PHS, yeah.
So, that's such an interesting question that you asked. And it's the biggest challenge that most entrepreneurs face. And matter of fact, that's the other part that we deal with in the entrepreneurship program. Because we realize that other than just coming up with a great brand, they now have the glamour. Because now they are seeing DJs Boo personally peddling more fire in street corners on the streets. And they say, so does it mean I personally have to be seen and be associated with this brand? And sometimes they are seeing Richard Branson jumping off of cliffs, doing bungee jumping, skiing, and doing all those things to sell the Virgin brand. And they're asking themselves, does it mean that I now need to be exactly like my company does things? I need to tell the company. So the key driver of the role your personal brand is going to play in your company. The key is an important question. And the question that you have to ask yourself is, what relevance and what importance and what value will your personal brand have if you want to associate it with this brand? So if you have been able to identify and say that, my personal brand will be, I can leverage it.
Yes.
Because I am well known, I am respected, and I'm associated with health. If I can attend it will help to build the PHS brand, the Proactive Health Solutions brand. So if that is, sometimes you do that. But now remember, the question you have to ask yourself is, how long are you going to last? Because at some stage, you then need to ask yourself, when am I going to transition from Dr. Fundi to just PHS? Because I am going to leave this brand for somebody, or I'm going to sell it, or is the brand going to die with me when I die? As happens a lot with the brands that we grew up with in the township. We do that. Correct. And as soon as they die, they leave. The brands disappear. So you have to ask yourself, what value does your brand play? And how?
But also, what about the risk? Again, and the reason was, I started the company obviously with other shareholders, Old Mutual being one as an institutional, shareholder. So, one had to then run it like that, and you wouldn't necessarily lift a Fundile in a company that's owned by so many other people before I bought all of those people up. But now the other risk is that Fundile does something stupid out there, and that then, was associated with the company. And therefore, then there is damage to the company, collateral damage as a result of something stupid that Fundile did out there.
Well, there is the one thing. The one thing is, what value are you going to add? But the second one is, what is the alignment of the values of the person who is associated with this brand and the values of the organization? Because a lot of times things can happen. Then there could be a disconnect between who you are as a person and how you conduct yourself, which then affects your company brand. So let's go for the big brands. Let's go for Elon Musk and his brands. So we're not just talking small brands. Elon Musk sometimes behaves like in the craziest ways. And you saw the shareholders and the American regulator had to ask him had to rein him in and had to ask him to be removed as a chairman of the company because he was affecting the share price of the organization with his behavior. So sometimes even as a founder, you can be a disconnect. That's why sometimes the decisions that you make is, you know what? To minimize the risk, I'm going to build the PHS brand. And me as Fundi, yes, I'm a doctor. Yes, my company is about medicine, but perhaps there are other things that I can do which are not associated with the organization. So I don't have to be the hero of the organization, but I can be the hero of my craziness. But unfortunately for entrepreneurs, there will be that risk that you will always be associated with the brand that you created. But as long as there's a separation, it is an easier thing. It is easier situation to manage. The problem becomes if there's no separation. That when you see the company and you are so integral to the company that it becomes a problem for the organization. Yes, there's a big branding risk for entrepreneurs in terms of how they associate their brands. But then, personal branding is not. Personal branding becomes for people for Jack Welch. So if you look at Jack Welch, the late Jack Welch, who was called the Chief Executive Standard, he was associated with the most successful 20-year period of General Electric. But he was not General Electric. He was just a custodian of a business, such that if Jack Welch made a mistake, they could just remove him and General Electric will continue. Because but yes, there was a lot of dependence or equity that's associated with having him lead the organization. We've seen here. But I mean, we've seen here Michael Jordan used to lead FNB, and he was a strong personal brand. And he linked his brand so strongly to FNB, talking about FNB's leadership in technology and all those. But when he left, he then took a grace period and then is reemerged as a techno investor in technology-led business. And so there is that ability to be able to transition or to separate yourself from your organization.
Yeah, because I was actually going to talk about the celebrity CEOs, and how those celebrity CEOs can either make or break a brand, and the guy who used to lead, FNB is an example of somebody who was a celebrity CEO.
One second, please. Let me just charge my computer.
No problems.
I forget these things as lasting.
Yes. Yes. So so my next question to you then is
celebrity brands. Yes.
Unpacking what is, because you guys have got a program called Brand You, creating a distinct brand for personal and professional success, right? Now, and the reason why I'm asking you about this one is that we are starting in South Africa to see professionals, whether they are lawyers or accountants, or medical doctors or physiotherapists or whatever. And by the way, in the healthcare space, we are generally a conservative group of professionals.
Not anymore.
I'm talking about historically. Historically, I mean, this is my 31st year as a medical doctor, and a lot of change has happened. The newer and the younger guys, are not like us when we qualified. So there is definitely that move from the conservatism to actually embracing branding, personal branding, professional branding. Now, I just want you in simple language, what is a personal brand?
To me, the simplest way is a brand, a personal brand, is a simple or an articulate or a simple way in which it's your reputation. It's what you are known for. It's what distinguishes you. So, growing up in a township, then people will say, do you know Thebe? And when people want to say Thebe, they will then follow what Konje udumengani uThebe.
Uthebe, well, uyacula.
So exactly. So that phrase, it is so important when they say konje udumengani uthebe. So in other words, what is it that distinguishes you? That is your personal brand.
Yeah.
It is what has created your social or your economic or whatever capital or your professional capital. What makes you different in the marketplace? What are you distinguished for and what makes you different? What are you known for and what makes you different?
Yes. You see, because for me, for example, yes, I qualified as a medical doctor and I've always been a medical doctor, but then I ventured out into business, as an entrepreneur and all of that. And for the greater part of the 21 years since we've had this company, I was like, no, do I introduce myself as a doctor or do I introduce myself as a businessman? And some people, you introduce yourself as a doctor, then they think, what does he know? Beyond injections and tablets, because that's what people think, especially in the first 5 years, that transition into the business world, people were like, no, man, why should we listen to solutions in business from somebody who only knows injections and tablets? They did not want to understand that there's more value that I'm bringing beyond injections and tablets. So, yeah.
So, because I'm sure when you were starting the business, you were saying, how do I leverage two things? One, how do I leverage my professional qualification or expertise rather as a medical doctor? And second, how do I leverage my social capital in terms of the people I can access to create a medical business or a business that specializes in within the medical field? So PHM is a business focusing on the medical sector. So are you with me? So yes, when you start that business and perhaps your CEO or you or one of your organization structure does not show the diversity of business leadership and it's just, then they say, but what does he know other than just tablets? But when they now look at PHS and they say, oh my goodness, so the COO is a former managing director of Mutual.
Yes, because my former CEO was former CEO of Sizwe Medical Aid, and my COO was somebody who was working for Anderson Consulting, and so I was learning under them.
So when they see that, they should see they should have or would have been or you'd have positioned PHS as a company within the medical fields, and your leadership having deep knowledge and understanding of medicine, both as practitioners and consulting and all and a whole range of things. I mean, that's again how I would have looked at it if I was out.
Just another dilemma, as a medical doctor who had been in practice for a number of years. Now you are a doctor, you've got your surgery by the corner somewhere there. You put something that says Dr. Fundi Lenyati, MPCHP, Natal, 1989. So when the people come into the premises, they already know you. They saw your board outside. They know that you qualified from Natal. So, there's an expectation based on what was shown outside. Venturing into the world of business, and our solutions are people-related solutions. That is, you come through HR. Now, your entry point will be some junior HR, lady there. And you need to convince that lady that they set you up to meet with the HR director so that you can talk solutions. Now, so your reputation as a medical doctor means nothing.
Zero.
Right? So you now need to learn not to use your title to get what you want. You must actually be a human being. You must be able to, put your value proposition in a way that somebody listens and takes it to the right person who is an influencer or decision maker within the company. But that switch from where you are guaranteed an audience because of the title that is outside to where your title means nothing and it is what you are bringing to the table that will determine whether you go to the next level or not.
Well, I mean, I think you've answered it. The first thing is to recognize that you are dealing with perhaps 2 or 3 brands. The first brand that you are dealing with is PHS.
Yeah.
So PHS is a company. So on its own, it has to define what is its own as a CVP, consumer value. Are you with me? What is its own USP? What is its own unique selling proposition?
Yes.
So you have to define that on its own. So just because you're a doctor does not mean that you can automatically. And then second, you have to recognize that it is led by certain people. Then perhaps now, like I said earlier, you then say, how do I add credibility or validate our business? Well, there's probably 2 things or 2 or 3 areas where you're going to add that. One is you're going to say it's perhaps with our products.
Yes.
Right? So you say it's our products, so our services. So now your services have to have their own USP, right? Because now your service needs to say, well, we offer wellness programs that are underwritten by Old Mutual. Now that on its own, we call it an Old Mutual PHS. So that on its own now says, well, see, PHS as a company understand what they're about. They're in this medical space. Now their products is the first way I can add credibility, or maybe not, because sometimes it's a new product in the marketplace that has not credibility, right? Then you say, perhaps if I don't have credibility or not, but then perhaps I can have personal brand credibility. So now you say that you can trust me, because Fundi, I went to Natal to get an MBCG. I'm not going to mention other names, but you know, so I come from a quality school, and I've got a grade, and then people says I can trust him because he's selling he represents this company, selling this product, and he is qualified to talk about this. So right there, we've spoken about 3 brands that are there. As an entrepreneur, you will have to sell
the company, the leadership, and the actual products themselves.
And the actual product, or it's sometimes the product is your approach at doing things, right? Because it may not necessarily be a physical and all those things. So at any one of those points, you have to understand that you are branding constantly, and that you understand that at the highest level, if you want to leave the business behind for other generations, you have to brand PHS.
Yes.
And that you are going to have to borrow PHS a few things. You're going to have to borrow some equity, and some equity is going to be cash, others is going to be professional equity. Then you say that I'm going to lend it professional equity or social capital even, because you can lend it there as well. You can say Ziwa will lend out. Or I'm an expert in this area. Or I've got money to do this thing. So those are 3 things that you can borrow your company. But then you have to know that, like I said earlier, when do I transition? So now let's talk about somebody like Virgin. Richard Branson made a good example. That he started his own record company and named it Virgin. And he did not name it, he named it Virgin. And for a long time, he was the front man for his company. But what he ensured is that as he was building other companies, he was putting leadership in place, which brings its own credibility. Because investors couldn't really care less about Dr. Fundi on his own. What they care about, if you're going to put money into his business, is do they understand the space? And do they have the leadership for the space? And have they structured the organization correctly for the space? In the meantime, you can lend them your social capital, lend them your professional capital, and go to Standard Bank or Old Mutual to go borrow other capitals that they have.
Yes. All right. So I know I took you, on a detour, but so you were defining a personal brand and how important in this day and age, I mean, when you guys, you're saying creating a distinct brand for personal and professional success. So branding can lead to success done correctly. All right. So just talk about it.
Well done. And you're right. So I'll recap that. Your brand is what you're known for, and that you do different from other people. That's your brand.
Yeah.
So you also started to speak about what a lot of professionals are doing. So I'm going to go to through it. You then started to speak about doctors and about lawyers and about managers who are now realizing that they are brands. Because now they realize there's a lot of doctors in this space. What's going to make my surgery different? How am I going to attract people to my surgery? So that's why then they start saying, do I develop the practice itself and bring in other services? I bring in a dentist, I bring in a plastic surgeon, I bring
in whatever.
Correct? Or do I develop the practice around me? You're seeing a lot that in the cosmetic space. A lot of these doctors in the cosmetic space have taken to attaching themselves to celebrities who are trying to...
the aesthetic medicine, yes.
The ones who are trying to jig themselves are going from African to Europe with one injection. Correct. So you can distinguish yourself in the rest. You've seen them, but you also then see lawyers as well. Lawyers are, you look at a person like Udali Tambo, Udali Mpofu. Udali Mpofu was a CEO first.
Yeah, yes, at Ultra, yes.
And other places. Yes, he studied law. He studied law. He qualified as a law. He probably accredited as a law, as a professional lawyer, but he never practiced, right? He went to business. Then when he left business, and then he said, I need to go back to law. But in going back to law, how do I distinguish myself? He then started saying, let me pick certain types of cases, because those cases will raise my profile, but they will also distinguish me as somebody to go for if you want to deal with this type of matter. So that's what you're beginning to see, because he recognized the advocates are dominated by white advocates, 80%. As a black advocate, how am I going to distinguish myself? And he decided to pick an area to find. And we can go across academia. Academics are people. Academics says everybody is a professor. What's going to make me different? What's going to make me different? And you begin to see some of them saying, I'm going to write a seminal book in this area, or I'm going to go on a global tour and do lectures. They're going to know that this is my area. Even though everybody's doing it, but I'm going to elevate how I do it. Because I set up my YouTube channel. So that's why a lot of them are doing it. They're doing it for that second part. What am I known for? And how different am I from everybody else who does it? So that's the primary reason on why people are branding. But then in branding themselves, they then want to ask themselves, why would I do this? What does success look like? What does success look like for me as a personal brand? Well, success looks like this. If you are branded, you are able to charge a premium. First, before then, let's say there's a greater awareness of your existence. And then second, people, there's a recognition of where you fit in. That leads to an important part, which is how you pay bills. Because now people seek you and you are able to charge a premium, because now everybody says, you don't go to Dr. Fundi, you know he is the best when it comes to doing X, Y, Z. And then Fundi then has got a long line. How's he going to make sure that long line is serviced? He raises the prices. And then he is able, and then people, because sometimes you raise the price, people put a greater value on it. But he is worth it. They say he is worth it or she is worth it. So that's what success looks like.
And you stop taking medical aid. People must pay upfront. They get reimbursed by their medical aids.
Correctly, because you don't have to do that mess that led to a lot of doctors suffering in the 90s and being in the 90s. Yes, so that's what success looks like. Success looks like greater awareness. It looks like you're able to charge premium, but most importantly, you become recognized as the expert or as the leader in the field. And by the way, it does not mean that you are the best. I always tell people there are 3 million better marketers in this country, 3 million better people who know branding perhaps than me and all those. The only difference is I'm better branded. Is that I practice what I teach. There's a clarity about when you call my name, everybody knows what I'm about. There's a visibility about it that creates that awareness. So to me, those are the 3 or 4 things that success looks like: visibility, awareness, recognition, and premium pricing, that you're able to fetch that. What else do you want? And then the most important thing what branding does, it helps you, it gives you a leverage. So now, if your name is called Dr. Fundi, and you've decided you've been practicing, you've run a medical practice, now you decide, let me start a medical aid. You now say, I'm gonna take my name and attach it to the medical aid. Or Richard Maponya takes his name and attach it to a mall. Or Richard Branson takes the vision and attach it to a cell phone, to a credit card, to a book, to a record company, because he's built equity into their name. So the same way that you can build equity into a company name, you can build equity into your personal name. Then people start saying, when Elon Musk, remember what Elon Musk did? Elon Musk took his name from having created PayPal to the electric car. Now he's in space. Why? He created success here. And then when he moved, he says, you know me, everything I touch turns into gold. The investors go with him. And then he makes a success out of this, and he says, you know me, everything I touch turns into gold. He's now the richest man in the world. And his mother last 2 weeks ago, remember, posted his matric assessment.
Yes. And he aced them.
Because he knew he's a genius. So the thing about great brands, by the way, the thing about creating a great personal brand, to me, it starts, the one C I didn't put in there, it starts with confidence.
Yes.
It starts with confidence. You know, I've got my 7 C's on how you build this brand, but everything starts with confidence. When you must say, me, I am worth it and I can do this. You can't build a brand. Of course, sometimes a brand can give you confidence, but when it comes to personal branding, you need to be confident. When it comes to other brands, the brand can give you the confidence, but you must be confident in yourself.
You know, I mean, just earlier today, for the last year now, I've been pushing this Dr. Fundi, a brand. Fundi being, a guru, an expert, but also it's a shortening of my name, Fundi, and, I'm getting, a lot of people who then seek me as a thought leader, for webinars, for opinion making. And this morning, there's some TV, Phoenix TV from Hong Kong in China. They want me to talk about vaccines and vaccination in South Africa. And my interview is going to be translated into Mandarin. And I'm thinking, okay. I was reluctant to meet these guys. I was like, who wants to know about, but then I agreed. And they're saying, you know what? We saw how you answer questions on SABC, and we now thought we need to talk to this guy. And he says, most probably after we featured you there in Hong Kong and in China, maybe other stations or whatever, so I'm just saying leveraging success of one exposure or, to another level,
Your personal brand, Fundi, your personal brand is an entry point to your organization. It's an entry point to your product. It's an entry point to your expertise. So PHS on their own, there's a million companies, right? There's a million companies which perhaps do what you do and maybe are different or all those things, but they were now able to attach an expertise to a person. So now they are seeking a thought leader, like you say, they are seeking somebody to give an opinion, or they are seeking somebody they want to partner with. Your personal brand gives you the leverage to do just that. They know your name, they can then lead them to your company or to your products or to your profession. And then they then say, oh my goodness, we saw you, we Googled you. Then we got to see what else you do. We are interested in investing in your organization.
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Yes.
So in many ways, a personal brand does that. Not just visibility, not just an ability to charge a premium. Not only does it establish you as a thought leader in your space, not only does it provide you with the leverage, but to me, it is an entry point to all conversations that you may want to have. And as an entrepreneur, it is the first conversation they want to have, because they want to know, who is this person I'm putting my money into?
Yes.
Maybe you've got this idea. Who are you? So then they will Google you. They say, oh, Thebe, no. That one was attached with 3 million scandals. Then they don't care how good your company was, right? Or your idea was. They just know if it's associated with Thebe, it is probably a scandal, a scam, or it is going to lead to some scandal. So that's why your name is so important. It is, they say it is worth more than gold and silver. Because you see, with your name, you can create a whole lot more. With your company, there's a limitation of what you can create. But with your name, you can create other companies. That companies could fall, but your name can help you to create other companies. Your name is leverage.
Yes. And so, like I mentioned, that the medical profession, the legal profession, in fact, marketing was outlawed, in those kind of professions. You had to have that little board that is so many centimeters, wide and all of that. But, right now, people are trying to move away, from that, historic conservative approach to these things. Now, they talk here, about congruence, and I think you've touched on it, congruence between, I think, the consistency between your personal and professional brands and the brand assets. So in a person, if we're talking an organization or a product, we will talk about brand elements and all of that. So in a personal and professional brand, what are the elements there?
So to me, and I want to start at the end, which is where you are, which is congruence. Congruence to me says there needs to be an alignment between who you are and where you are. You as a person, your set of value as an entrepreneur, as a person, must be aligned with the organization that or the brand where you are associated with. So you cannot say, oh, but this is me at church. And then after church at work, but they say, no, as the band is. So that's not the same WhatsApp. Thebe at church is completely different from what Thebe at 17. And 17, we are Tulana, he swears, he kicks things, he calls people's names and all those things. In church, he is the holiest man. He glorifies. Everybody sees him as the epitome of holiness as a man. Because what happens is, I always tell people that congruence is about understanding that you cannot, unless you are schizophrenic and you accept that schizophrenia is not a disease, but rather a way of life, then it's okay to have multiple brands. So in other so we must all accept that schizophrenia is an illness. It is not a normal state of being. It is an abnormal state of being. So if you accept that, now accept that you cannot have multiple personalities.
Yes.
Consistency,
across your different aspects of your life.
Correct. Between who you are at home, who you are at work, and who are at play. That's congruence. But everything starts in the beginning. In the beginning, this one I always say, I call it the first step of building a personal brand is understanding the context. The first C is the context. And context is understanding, in the private world, in the world of businesses and brands, we will call it understanding the market, understanding the competition, understanding. So in other words, you need to understand how you project, how you are received into the world. So you just behave, right? You just behave who you are. Context is trying to understand and ask the question, when they say Thebe, what comes to mind?
Yeah.
And then people says, oh yes, Thebe, you can't put your finger on him. Some days is this, some days is that, some days that.
Yeah.
So then you say, oh my God, there's a bit of disconnect, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's clarity. Sometimes they say, Thebe, oh no, you're talking about X. No, X. So you understand. So there's what I call your default brand. So context, understanding your default brand, understanding who you are, how you are accepted, how you are received in the world, and how different you are from other people who perhaps do what you do.
Yeah.
And so that's understanding the context of your brand. Clarity, which is the second C. Clarity is about narrowing the gap between the default brand and the desired brand. Because now remember now, you then find out that this is how people see you everywhere.
Yes.
And you say to yourself, but that's not me. And that's what we say. We say, that's not me. Then you ask yourself,
but the feedback is telling you that this is how we see you.
Yes. So then you need to say, but who am I, or who do I want to be?
Yeah.
So then you need to reconcile, then you need to narrow the gap between how you are seen and who you are or you want to be, and narrow down the gap.
Yes.
And provide clarity. Because you now need to provide the clarity. Because remember, by providing the clarity as a person, it is now how you behave, what you present of yourself, and how you present yourself. So whatever you present, you now decide, no. I want them from now on to understand this. I am a church-going person. And as a church-going person, I do not wear iskepeza. I am, so now I need to, because they think that you need iskepeza. So now you say, I need to start dressing a certain way. I need to be a certain way. And I'm just talking about the stuff. Are you with me? But also, because if you say, hey, this person, we don't know what he does. Then you say, oh, I need to narrow down. People need to know I'm in the medical space. Or in your space, they need to know I'm an entrepreneur with a medical background.
Yes.
So are you with me? You see the difference. But you could also be an entrepreneurial doctor.
Yes.
So there's two things that you can think about. But you're probably an entrepreneur with a medical background.
That's how I see it.
Rather than an entrepreneurial doctor. An entrepreneurial doctor will open the practice, will add other things, will bring other doctors and put other things. That's an entrepreneurial doctor. But an entrepreneur with a medical background will say, how do I use my medical background to create a business?
Yes.
So that's how you provide clarity. Then they say, am I a doctor? Am I not a doctor? Because now if you're an entrepreneur, next thing we see, you got your surgery, you are there from 5 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock. He's a businessman. We've got a business there. So provide the clarity. Tell us who you are.
Yes, and there's another C of competence.
What's that?
I'm saying there's another C of competence, another clarity.
So now linked to clarity is called competence. Why is competence very important? Competence is you cannot claim to be things that you're not good at, that you're not qualified for. Because competence is, what am I qualified to do? Qualified does not necessarily mean eskolwe.
Yeah.
As you with me. Competence says, let's say, for example, let's say I'm not a doctor, me, and then I want to position myself as an entrepreneur within the medical space. Competence is surrounding myself with doctors to create that business. Let's say if I was an entrepreneur, competence, and then perhaps also taking a course or two in understanding that stuff. But if you're on the other side, competence is about saying, how do I upskill myself? Or how do I bring into myself the type of skills that are required for me to claim that clarity?
Yes,
So if I'm claiming to be an entrepreneur within with a medical background or within the medical space, competence then becomes, I hire doctors, we've got doctors, And you heard me, it validates. Competence is about validation.
Yes.
More than anything. It validates, right?
Yeah.
It validates your claims. And then the third thing is, I call it cover. Cover to me, presentation more than anything. It's how you present yourself. Do you know, packaging is what we call packaging in marketing, right?
Yeah.
But you know, Jack Nicholson, he said, without my glasses, I'm just a 60-year-old fat guy. He says, but with my glasses, I'm Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
That's how they recognize me. So it's packaging, right?
Yes.
So that's why you see the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church or whatever you call it, they've got packaging. They say, how do you know I'm a Catholic priest? Or how do you know he's the leader of the Catholic Church? He lives in Rome at the Vatican.
Yeah.
He dresses like this when he goes out. He doesn't dress like that inside the room, by the way. When he's inside in his private space, he's short and he's wearing jeans and all those things. But when he goes out to become the Pope, he dresses like the Pope. Because the day the Pope leaves the Vatican, we are not going to trust him. We are going to pass him on the streets as not the Pope. Are you with me? And that packaging. Packaging is 360. It's not just. It's not just. We can't call your business a medical practice if you are consulting out of a garage. With me, and you do not have the equipment that I expect from a doctor's of a practice. And you're not wearing your white coat, or you're not throwing your scrubs, or you got the stethoscope throwing. The reason doctors throw a stethoscope here, they don't need to have those stupid things around their neck. It is just a visual connection of I am a doctor. So even if I'm not wearing my scrubs, I am a doctor. So that's the cover. And that cover must be linked to the competence, right? It must be linked to the clarity, as a doctor. And it must be linked to the context. The context, he is in the medical space. That's why you see how each and one follows onto that.
And the connections undercover.
Then, of course, then the next one is the connections. And the connections really is about understanding how are you going to create connections for your brand. What are you going to connect to your brand? How are you going to tell the story of your brand? Oh, I'm going to set up a website. I'm going to come up with the URL, my name. Call me Dr. Fundi X. I'm going to create a logo. I'm going to, so it's that part of now, it's that part of how you connect. I'm going to set up a YouTube channel. I'm going to create this talk. That's how I'm going to broaden my connections, right? It's sort of how I'm gonna build my touch points. I'm gonna build my touch points, right? And then the next one I spoke about is
we've already spoken about congruence.
We've spoken about congruence, right? And then the final one is commercialization. Now, commercialization is understanding how am I going to make money out of all this? And what value am I going to put on this? So that's why, so for example, so someone like me, I speak everywhere. Sometimes they'll call me to go speak and they'll say to me, oh, but we only have 10 rand, 10,000 rand, whatever, or 10 rand, whatever for you to speak. But Thebe has, say, for example, Thebe has given a value for himself. Like for myself, his comment is pretty public that I charge so many thousands, 50 to 75,000 for an hour to speak. So let's say you know that. And then you come to Thebe, hi Thebe, 10 rand. Do you mind doing this for us? If Thebe understands his value, or even if you go to 40, 50, 49,000 rand and Cherry Chavez charges 50, and Thebe understands his value. Thebe understands that he cannot accept the 49,000 rand, or 10 rand. Because by accepting that, he has just brought down the price. That's why an artist, you know, they asked, and I don't know, I can't remember the story, but there was a court appearance. And in court, the judge asked the artist, I don't know if it was Picasso or somebody, And he said to the guy, how long did it, he says, how long did it take you to put together that artwork, that painting? He said, well, about an hour. And the judge says, an hour? What makes you think you can charge somebody for an hour's work R1 million or £1 million? He says, Your Honor, because it took me 30 years to be able to arrive at a point where I can do this in an hour.
Yeah.
So I'm not charging you for an hour's labor. I'm charging you for 30 years experience to be able to deliver two things. The quality of the product, but also the branding of this product so that you can tell people, I've got a Picasso.
Yes.
Are you with me? So, that's how you understand how to commercialize. So that's why, even in your space and all those things among doctors and all those, why they're beginning to brand and distinguish themselves. They do the same thing. They're like, Fundi is not 350 rand consultation. It's 350, 3,500.
I mean, staying in Bryanston, and I have to call a plumber before they even come to see what my problem is at home. Already I have to pay like 750 call out fee, and then they are charging per hour, even if they spend 5 minutes. And I mean, so you ask yourself, I spent so many years behind the desk to be what I am, and this guy, no disrespect to them, but they know how to charge, and value themselves. And so we need to get to that point where we value ourselves properly.
They understand their value, but they also understand where their value is being acquired. So somebody in Soweto, with no disrespect, is not going to pay 750 an hour.
Yeah.
From a plumber who lives in Soweto.
Yeah.
But somebody who pays in Bryanston or Sandton is going to expect. Matter of fact, if a plumber comes to you and charges 250 rand, you won't even trust it.
Yes.
You will not even trust it. You will say, a plumber, 250, no, it just doesn't make sense. So that's why commercialization is so important. It is understanding. Do you know, Nelson Makama explained this to me. He said,
he's the artist.
Yeah, he said to me, "You're so lucky you were able to acquire my work before the Global Citizen Festival, because Global Citizen Festival brought Oprah Winfrey, Ava DuVernay, all those American superstars." And then Nelson explained something interesting. He says to me, Oprah bought 2 of the biggest pieces from our studio. And Oprah says, "Is this all I'm paying?" And Oprah says, "As I leave your studio, everything is going to go up 10 times. Because Oprah has bought." So now Oprah's association with even Oprah once and Nelson elevates the value. I told you the story of Thebe jeans earlier. Thebe, before Meghan Markle, was 950. After Meghan Markle, is 1,800 for the same jeans.
Yes, I mean the optometrist or the designer of the glasses that Oprah was wearing on the day that she was interviewing Meghan and Harry. Everybody now wants those frames from that guy, and so his prices have gone up.
Now you understand what personal branding does.
Yes. Now I understand. So in terms of what then is offered at APLA, what can you say to people who want to learn more about personal branding and maybe also be assisted, almost like consultation besides the education part, which you offer at APLA? But if I say, Thebe, as a consultant, come and do an assessment of where my brand is, my personal brand, and also this is where I would like it to be. Help me with a strategy and and some tactics of how to move it from here to there, and help monitor if I'm making progress over time. Do you do something like that?
Good question. So the company I founded when I left Nike is now 20 years old this year. Brand leadership. So brand leadership is an advisory. It helps people to build brands, to develop brands, and to build brands, and to maintain and to grow those brands. That's what brand leadership does.
Yeah.
Abla teaches them how to do it.
Yes.
So Abla can just give you the tool. But if you want somebody to then guide you, if you want an organization then to guide you, that's what we do at Brand Leadership. So that's what we do for organizations up to today. But of course, one of the things that I'm realizing now is then there is the requests that I get quite often about because personal branding can be so personal and it can be generic. For the everyday man, they can go and pay the 15,000 or whatever it is, 10,500, I guess, for 3 weeks and benefit from 3 classes of personal branding, and they can go apply these ideas to themselves. But for the executive or that CEO or that person who wants to a personal consultation, well, we offer coaching services as well to help them in that space. But so there's consulting and there's coaching. So there's consulting, which is what Brand Leadership does, and then there's consulting, which we can then ensure that the right person is attached to.
Yeah. Now, another chartered marketer is actually watching and listening to what we've been talking about. Zipporah Mahomo Mauban. She says, great energy as always. I think that's in reference to you. You know.
Just saying, really guess about who Thebe is ranting and raving again.
Yes, no. She's one of my favorite people. You know, and she eats, drinks, and sleeps thinking around matters of marketing, communications, and branding. So yeah, I've got great respect for her. Thank you, Zipporah, for listening.
Yeah, she's an excellent marketer. She's done excellent work in the previous organization. I know she's moved on now, but she really transformed that business and from where it was to where it is, together with your brother.
So yes, no, she's done great work. For me, I'm still associating her with, that, because when I see that brand, I just see her, and it will be like that for quite some time, Yeah, but anyway, your closing remarks, Thebe, in terms of just, the people that have been watching and listening, who've given us their time on a Monday holiday, just encouraging them around importance of branding.
Well, I think in closing, there's a couple of things. First one is we keep talking about it's Africa's time. But we've been saying that since 1963. So 1963, when Kwame Nkrumah, on the 24th of May, put out a manifesto of how to transform the continent. He went out and he says, it is now Africa's time, and Africa must unite or it must perish. And he put out a blueprint of how we are going to do that.
Yes.
And one of the most important elements of that is we need to industrialize. In other words, we need to create our own rather than just to consume. So we need to create, then consume, and create, commercialize, consume, right? We haven't been able to do that.
Yes.
We will say it one more time. It's long overdue that Africa must feed itself. Africa must defend itself. Africa must educate itself. But in order to do those successfully, Africa must believe in itself. So it is very, very difficult for us to progress as a continent, to have all 54 countries hand begging for a vaccine in the world when we have all the knowledge that we could have transformed to create our own vaccine and to become the breadbasket of the world rather than to be out there. So it is long overdue that we need to believe in ourselves, believe in our abilities. But most importantly to me is we need to support our own, because our continent is unconscionable that 20% of the most admired brands in the continent are not made in Africa. We've got the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement, which to drive intra-Africa trade from 18% in now where we are 2021 to 50% in 2030. That is 9 years from now. So in 9 years, 10 years, if we do not begin to believe in this continent, to invest in this continent, to believe in each other, to support each other, we will still, in another 50 years, be talking about it's Africa's time. To me, Africa's time is long overdue. We are out of time. We need to get going and do what we do. And of course, and we cannot depend on government to do that. Government is just an enabler, but government does not start you out. So if you look at America or Germany or England or France, the great ideas that we are consuming now, whether it's from the vehicles, from the technology, or from the fast food and all those, they were created by individuals. All government did was just to support them along the way. But irrespective of government support, they still forged ahead. It is time to not leave our destiny in the hands of government, especially noticing what governments are doing around the continent. They have none of our interests at heart and none of our welfare at heart. We are in charge of our destiny.
Just one question, man, that I thought I was going to ask you earlier. As Africans, we are generally communal people. And we are raised to be people who, even if you are doing good, you wait for others to lift you up, all right, to acknowledge you, all right? We are taught to have humility in success. Now, with that kind of thing, and how do you then relate this to what we've just been talking about, personal branding? Because for me, personal branding is about lifting yourself up and saying, hey, this is me. And this is what I offer. This is my expertise. And by the way, I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something that Americans do very well. So isn't there an underlying tension between who we are raised to be as Africans and the concept of personal branding?
Oh, I don't think so at all. How do you explain King Shaka? He is a brand. He is a brand. How do you explain the concept of somebody says, you must always shop higher because they do certain things a certain way? How do you explain the fact that people always say, that teacher is the best at mathematics, so you must try to get into her class? That's personal branding. So there is no disconnect with African communal way. I think where people think there's a disconnect is where they think that by standing out, you are stamping others, you are trampling others. That's where the problem is. Standing out does not mean leaving others behind, and it does not mean putting others down. Standing out, if you, as we say in African context, you lift. That's good personal branding. Then as you rise, ensure that you are also lifting others, you are elevating others. So there is absolutely no disconnect between personal branding and the African way of being. Matter of fact, personal branding will enable the African way of being better than anything else.
Dad, daughter.
Your Tswana has improved in 30 years in Gauteng.
Thank you very much, Thebe. Thank you. You know, I would have paid a lot of money just for these 2 hours of your time, you know, and but I hope there is something that I gave to you in return. You know, more people will go to that website of APLA and register to acquire the necessary knowledge, you know, that is contained within the various offerings there. So yeah, it's of course, as we say, isandla sihlamba esinye. You know, one hand, you know, washes the other. You know.
Correct. I think it's an African concept. So me, as long as I've got a lifetime of injections and tablets, and the most injection being the vaccine against COVID-19, then you would have done your job.
No, we'll talk. Now, thank you very much. And also thank you to all our viewers who have been listening to my discussion with Mr. Brands, Thebe, Ikalafeng, the ones who say, no, go heal yourselves. He's giving us the knowledge. Let's now go and heal ourselves in terms of the poor brands that we have developed over time, the default brands that need a lot of healing. So thank you very much. And we hope that you have enjoyed the discussion and you've learned something from it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Fundi. Thank you.
All right. Kalebo.